My name is Joseph Cornelius Donnelly. I am an American citizen born in New York.
My name is Guillermo Carver. I am originally from Uruguay.
My name is Lima Bowie. I'm from Liberia. I live and work in Accra, Ghana.
I am Matthews George. I work for the World Council of Churches as a program executive for Asia and human rights.
My name is Vali Batchelor, and I come from Australia at this stage.
Yes, I'm Chris Ferguson. I work with the World Council of Churches at the United Nations Liaison Office in New York.
As you see on my tag, my name is Ayano Chule Diyabo, and I'm a Reverend by ordination, and I'm working with Anerella.
My name is Lisandro Orlov. I am a pastor of the United Evangelical Lutheran Church in Argentina.
I'm Doug Hostetter. I work as the director of the Mennonite Central Committee Liaison Office to the United Nations.
My name is Marta Benavides. I was born and raised in El Salvador, and that's where I carry out my ministry.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a secular legal expression, if you like, a semblance of the deeper conditions of peace and justice that God wills for the world. So we don't believe that the Human Rights Declaration is sacred, but it represents the same sacred goals that God has for the world. It's an approximation or a near expression of the importance. So we use it. For the church, I would say that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights is like a tool for the struggle for human dignity. It's something that we can use in our prophetic ministry to hold governments account. And we're, of course, in a terrible situation now that the very countries that promoted, the countries of the West particularly, that promoted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights are now those who are eroding the rule of law, so that it can be a debate in the United States 60 years after the Universal Declaration was accepted worldwide, that whether or not these cruel and inhuman practices that we see the United States government allowing in interrogation, which we know to be torture. Now it's an open question, is torture ethical and permitted and allowed? So we see the odd situation that the world on the one hand has never been clearer about the standards they should uphold, and at the same time have never been more flagrant in denying the standards. So before there was a debate, you could say that's our work to do, to get people to agree. Now they've agreed, and still human rights are flung aside in the false name of security and so
on. I don't know what to do after the death of my wife, because if I teach in the class in the church's institution, my teaching will be not weighty, because everybody will be gossiping after me that so it is difficult for me to be a teacher in front of people who do not agree that there is HIV in the church. So I think it is God's own way of doing things, because he knows the future from the beginning. So It is when Gideon Byanogisha, the canon of the Church of Uganda, met me that he shared the vision he has, and along with others, and at the end of the day in 2003, I agreed to join ANRELA because ANRELA speaks about its own members' story. We do not talk about anybody so that nobody will be embarrassed. We are speaking about ourselves. And our stories are not actually good. They are bad stories, but they are realities. They are things which actually happened. So whether people like it or not, I lost a beautiful wife who is a Christian. I married in a Christian home. I married in the church, and I am HIV positive.
It was adopted 60 years ago this year, and yet I suspect if it were to be voted on in the United States right now, it probably would not pass. Certainly if it were brought before the United Nations with our current mix of struggle, it would not pass. It was a unique moment in history. I think when the world recognized the horrors of the dehumanization of war, of fascism, and that horror brought us together to affirm the dignity and the humanity of each person.
Human rights is a framework, that help us to, it's like tools, it's handles that can help us to see the various aspects that we have to work on so that we can have a humane life here on earth. And for me, I think it was a great step for humanity to be able to bring that declaration and have it as a frame of reference to see how well we are doing. So it's coming of age, in a sense, coming of age as a society. Not all of the countries really respect them, and it is the responsibility of the state and the government to create the conditions so that the human rights are fulfilled. And this go along with other conventions like the Convention of the Rights of People to Self-Determination, the rights of people to development, which some people consider that that's not right to development, but we are here on earth to evolve, but to evolve for the common good. And then, like the economic, social, and cultural rights of people are very important, especially, to work with all these other aspects. And to me, it's very important in the context of what's happening right now, with the increase in prices because of, not because there is no food, but because there are so many other elements that make a basic right, like the right not to live in hunger, to be jeopardized. So I think that everybody should really be educated about human rights, because otherwise you can be a human here on earth but not necessarily humane, and you're going to miss the point of being here.
When you promote the human right, you promote the presence of Christ in the life of all the people. This is not something different from live the gospel. Human right is the core, is the center of our faith. Is the understanding dignity of all people. All are equal. All people are born from God equal. And nobody can steal that dignity. Nobody has the right to destroy the dignity of a people. This is the center of our preaching, dignity of all people, those who the society and sometimes the church consider unclean. I like when Christ challenged his society, when he healed a leper. It's not a healing process, it's a citizen process, because the people who have a disease was excluded from the right of being citizen in that society, are also member of the church. And when Christ touched, that means he became unclean and need go through a process of purity, because if you touch a leper, people, the society and the religious people consider you a leper like the others. I like that gesture. Scandalize. I want to scandalize my church and my society, embracing all that people who others consider unclean and pure.
I was involved in the post-Boxing Day tsunami experience. Well, I chose to go out to Sri Lanka, to the southern part of Sri Lanka, which was badly hit by the tsunami. It was called the Gold Coast, and I went as a Christian, passionately wanting to do some mission work. So at that point I met a fisherman who had lost the whole fishing village. He was the head of the fishing village for decades, and we just met up with him by chance, and we got someone translating for us, and he was left with his mother-in-law. His 5 children and his wife were washed away by the tsunami. He was a Sinhalese man in my understanding, and his words, which totally inspired me, was that he said, I will be a Christian, a Buddhist or a Muslim as long as I can restore the dignity and bring back hope to those who remain alive around me. That words was really entrenched into me, and it changed my way of seeing Christian mission work. Just one more thing, in that experience, in that event, before I went back, I met an American lady of Dutch background whose son was telling me about the story of her son, who was a medical intern out there in Sri Lanka at that time. He had helped with stitching up some people with very basic needle and thread to keep them going post-tsunami, and they're waiting for appliances to come because people were dying because of infection, and they were really in need, and he went on working. And after several weeks they received boxes, and apparently he had opened several boxes and he had a breakdown. I think it was after the 7th box, because they were all filled with Bibles. And I was hearing the words from the mother, and it really turned my perspective of Christian-based mission work. I feel there's wonderful work done by the churches, extremely powerful, but I feel that we should not be dictating to another faith, another culture. We should try to go down there and find what their needs are.
Article 25 mainly, which speaks about the, I would say that the basic amenities in their life, right to food, right to shelter, right to education, and right to medical care. And these are the things that they are deprived, or most people are deprived in their day-to-day life. So there is no point in simply talking to a hungry person who lives most of his lifetime or most of the time in a day with an hungry stomach. Okay, we have to talk about your political rights and your civil rights. If he is hungry, poor, naked and malnourished and diseased and no education and no medical care. So these basic amenities of life that needs to be protected, and that is the most important thing for many people, or a vast majority of people in developing countries, especially in the Asian context in many of the countries.
I think churches, Christian organizations should care about human rights because they are, once again, tools, guidelines that should already exist within everything we breathe from our faith, which fundamentally says, love God, love your neighbor, or as in Micah, do justice, love God, walk humbly. It's about really accompanying one another as human beings. And while some people say, oh, human rights, oh, that's very political, oh, that's very controversial. So if they're controversial because they're discussed in capitals or in the United Nations, intergovernmental bodies, the fundamental place where they should be discussed for us then is churches. It is the very seat of our being church. It's those gathered together to be, to do, to be present, and not merely to take care of ourselves and hope that we have a good relationship with our community, our family, or God, but an honest and good relationship with the world within which we live. And that those expanding circles should have no different status for development and quality of life than the most inner core of our own family where we grow. And so for my sense of things, and I believe for Caritas, we would say that for a city, a place to be truly human, and hence really a blessing from God, it has to have us in it. And if we're not doing that, it won't have much soul. And I would say the seat of soul in us finds its rest also in the place where we worship and in the context where we believe as a community, but never as an exclusive community.
You can never talk about my human rights if my welfare, if I don't have food, if I don't have clothing, if almost 80% of my population is in poverty and 20% live in total wealth, where you have one group who can barely find water to take their bath or to drink, and you have one group in a society like myself who has so much water to the point of watering your grass till water flows out in the street. What good is a human rights declaration if you have that kind of inconsistency in the livelihood of people? There will always be rich and poor people, but I think the maker of this earth didn't do it in a way that everyone should suffer. So yes, these documents are good, but the ability for people to make them hands-on, effective for the everyday lives of people. So there is this contradiction. While we have a Declaration of Human Rights, a lot of us are taking sides with these governments that are really not doing anything for the ordinary people. But because it is in the interest of the world leaders, maybe there's a little oil there, or maybe there's a little diamond there, or maybe there's timber that we need, or maybe there's rubber that we need. For example, take Liberia. For 100+ years, the Firestone rubber plantation has operated in one of the worst settings. People live in huts that are only fit for families of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There has never ever been a single denouncement by the government of the US on the operations of Firestone. So take it from global to local. In their practices, these big companies come and they commit the worst human rights abuses in local context. But because they have the backing of their governments, no one says anything. So yes, while we celebrate the Human Rights Declaration, let's make them effective for ordinary people.